So I am Kathy Spencer-Pike, and I am Vice President at Novo Nordisk, and I have the pleasure of being here with Robin, and we're going to walk through how design thinking works in your life and hopefully how that can make a difference for us in Novo Nordisk. So good afternoon, Robin. I've never been to your facilities before, and what a phenomenal place to be.
I'm happy that you're here. I'm very excited to be a part of your event, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. And yes, it's startup life here at Glooko all the time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so why don't we start with you telling a little bit about who you are and what you do here?
Well, I have been in healthcare for the better part of 16 years, primarily in the diabetes space. I have focused on bringing both people and products together and articulating the concept of value. As the marketing director here at Glooko, we're constantly reimagining what value means and how we're putting together our idea of what the real problem is that we're trying to solve and who we're trying to solve it for. So that's a daily sort of conscious effort that we continue to sort of break down and build back up so that we're gaining traction in the market.
Awesome. And I know we're talking because we're going to be talking in just a few minutes about design thinking. And you're going to help me demystify it for our audience just a bit, but we'll get to that in just a second. So how about we get started?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So talk about how you discovered design thinking and maybe even how long ago you discovered it.
Yeah, so I think when I was first approached to do this, I reached out to some of my colleagues to figure out, what's the word on the street? How are people thinking about it? Are they using it? And, I talked to some of my creative colleagues and some of the non-creative colleagues. And interestingly enough, the more creative types didn't follow a framework, but in practice we're implementing it. And those that were a little less creative were falling closer to the framework, but each were getting like their the same type of positive results.
Okay.
And so for me, to answer your question on how it sort of presented itself, it never came to me like a label. It's really my approach to critical problem solving. So I'm very intuitive in my approach but very practical in my delivery. And so the concept of design thinking is more of like a structure that you can work within, but need to remain flexible.
So let me ask you this, because being in pharmaceuticals, I know you were at Abbott at one point, and you have mentioned the word creative thinking a couple times. So I'm sorry, you actually mentioned creative types and creative space. Do you think design thinking is more prevalent in the world you are in now versus the world you came from in pharmaceuticals?
No, I think, well, I'll say in startup life you have to be a little more fluid. So it may lend itself more to design thinking. In large corporate, organizations, there's far more processes and procedures and a little less flexibility. And so when there's an opportunity to work in an environment like this, then design thinking really can kind of take off. And so looking at, how do we use this structure, but then also how do we remain flexible enough to let a true solution come through?
That's really good, and it actually kind of demands my follow-up question, which is, how does design thinking inform your decisions then?
So, like I said, it's like a structure, and what I find really fascinating about design thinking is when you go through the steps of plugging in all the information you think you're supposed to have in there, and then you're supposed to expect an outcome on the other side, and it fails, right? And so where design thinking really comes through is when you let go of all of the things that you thought were true, and really start to focus on where did the design thinking flex, and you didn't pay attention to it because it was starting to take a different arc.
So, good explanation. And you're also talking to someone, in addition to our audience, who's really a neophyte in this space, but I'm really intrigued with it. But I know in my preparation to come today to speak with you and talking with some of my colleagues, it was really kind of fun for me to learn how misunderstood design thinking is. So can you speak a little bit about what you think often is the reason why design thinking is misunderstood?
Well, I guess what I'll say is that I think what's misunderstood about design thinking is that you are guaranteed a result if you follow this process. And that's not the case. I think design thinking is as unique as any individual applying their thought process, right? So I'm a marketer and I'm looking at it through my marketing lens. I work with product developers and engineers and all different types, and they look at it through their lens. they may have a different result from the same process, but it doesn't mean that both of our truths aren't accurate based on our discipline.
Wow. It's really good. It's a really good explanation. All right. So then let's get into the meat of really what design thinking is. I think this will help further illustrate to our audience kind of like, and help them wrap their brains around it. Certainly it'll help me, I can tell you that.
I'm still wrapping my brain around.
Well, I don't know, you seem like you've got it down. So can you give us a practical example of a time when you've used design thinking to really resolve an issue or a challenge that you were having?
I'll give an example of, I was with a specific organization that when I started, I didn't know that they were going to hand me a product that had been end-of-lifed. And as a marketer, that's not really the product you want. And they were like, take this dead product and resurrect it and just, make a brochure and go along your way. And so for me, I'm like, I'm pretty sure, one, I think anyone would know, brochure's not going to resurrect anything.
Right.
But I really wanted to understand what the problem statement was, right? So I started talking through some of the different issues with this product, with engineering and with the leadership and with the sales team. And I was like, I need to go talk to the customer. And so I wanted to go talk to some of them that are very vocal and unhappy, right? So what ended up happening is that, I've got this, they said, relaunch, make a brochure. I go out and I talk to this customer, and as you can imagine, he's not happy. They love the product, but it's been super buggy and unsupported for years. And the first thing out of his mouth is like, I don't know who you are, but, and it's just a whole landslide of feedback. But I knew in that feedback I was going to start to understand what the real truth of what was needed. So I said, thank you. And I said, I want to take my notes and go back and come back here with a solution that we can start to build on together. So with that, I knew that my understanding of what we needed to have happen was remove the barrier for this product, because it was a gateway for all the other products that we were going to be able to sell. And so negotiating with internal teams, you start to figure out, well, what can we do to bring down the firestorm of bugs and problems, and start to really collaborate with this particular health system on how we're going to align with their goals, how we're going to figure out more efficient workflows, where are the gaps that we weren't aware of. And so it starts to take a different picture of bringing a product back to life, because you start to bring it back to life in collaboration with your key stakeholders.
That's a big point, right?
Right.
Because it really is about taking your customer or the end user into consideration.
Right, and so where it started to take, and that's where you start to look at, how do I flex this journey and my design thinking in a way that's accommodating maybe a goal that we didn't really see coming. And so as we started to work on the issues together, we started to create a center of excellence in this particular health system. And as you know, health systems like to be better than the other, right? They're very competitive. And so as a reference site, then we would have another health system come in and say, hey, I see how you're doing it here, that's awesome, I'm going to do it even better over here. And we ended up having more of a collective of health systems talking about a similar topic. We were able to put together joint roadmap thinking for our next generation platform, and also thought leadership opportunities, talking about specific topics related to the products and services that we were providing. And so where you start to see the arc going across, which did end up in a new brochure, but it was such a better situation where you have, a great, strong platform for product development, for understanding relationships, and, just fantastic outcomes. And so having that flexibility to think past, and realize what that problem is and who you're solving it for, it just started to take on, something more meaningful.
So what I hear you describing is probably a process a bit, and so correct me if I'm completely off base on this one, Robin, but what I hear you describing is a process where it forces us to take a step back and suspend our own agenda of what we think the customer wants, and really put ourselves into a space where we're really listening and really attuned to what they want.
Right.
Yeah?
Right. I have found the most amazing information just by listening in between the words that people are saying. and then figuring out how do I put that together in a way that's meaningful for all of us,
Sure.
that you can get the tingles around, like, this is really going to be something, something great. And I think one of the things that's important about design thinking is not allowing the truth as you see it to get in the way of a true solution, because truth is, there are facts, and there's truths, but they're all different based on what you're trying to accomplish. So being flexible, and I sort of want to reiterate that you got to be flexible and watch the progression of that process, because it may take you in a different direction.
So I'm curious, because I'm wondering if the audience may be thinking this too. So you clearly are a student of design thinking. You've been using it in how you create and work. In order to be successful, do your team members and the folks that you work with internally also need to be students of design thinking for this for you to really work successfully in a team?
I don't think so.
No.
I feel like there are inputs that are relevant from everyone. And if, let's say, you're working with a team that maybe the concepts are new, and maybe they're even a newer team together, I think it provides the structure. But as you get into it, you have to just have the awareness that A plus B is not going to always equal C. You may have to put in some letters and some blocks and some colors and some different things in order to realize that you've got a different approach. I don't think that it needs to be something that is so serious.
That informalized like that?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. So fantastic example. So the example that you provided was really how you resolved being asked to create something that ultimately became something so much better.
Yeah.
Can you give us another example of where you used and optimized design thinking to solve a customer's challenge or a customer's issue at hand?
Well, that was a customer's issue. However, like if I look at it from our product, like a Glooko product, right? And we had designed this product to do X, and it was all thought through and amazing, and it's all going to be great. And the customer didn't use it that way. We trained them, you've got your messages and your tips and tricks, and they were like, nope, we're going to use it for something completely different, and we like it like that. And so we were like, well, that's annoying, but we're going to go back and rethink the product and make it optimized for what their actual need was. And so looking at something that maybe seemed like it might have been failing in our original approach, but understanding that there was a gem in there that needed to be surfaced.
So I'm going to ask a provocative question in that example. And hopefully I mean this to just seeking to understand. So you and the team designed a product that you thought the customer would use one way. They used it a different way. So along the journey and pathway of design thinking, was there potentially a miss in terms of understanding the customer's desire and objectives, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was probably some rigidity in how we were thinking.
Yeah.
We had come to the conclusion. We're like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So we're done,
Not
right?
that we ever do that in our business, right? Ever.
It's just, we just were really inflexible. And I don't know, inflexible, you just believed.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
We believed. And so turns out that maybe the dream was a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, but there was still some value in what we did. It just took us a while to be like, oh, okay, they're asking for something different, so can we just listen to that for a minute?
Right. Well, it goes back to your statements about truth. Like, we all kind of have our own version of truth, but when we're trying to satisfy customers' needs and really looking for that collaborative partnership, it's about suspending, or at least willing to put our truth over here and really embrace their truth. So it's a really good example.
I mean, as long as, the longer your career gets, the more set, and you're like, I've done this and I can see that. And even now for me, I look at things and I think, oh, this is how it's going to fold out, but I might be talking to someone who might be even new to the team or know some other area that I'm not as versed in, and I'm like, oh, I think that is an awesome insight, and that's actually feeding more into kind of my thinking, and we can go even further.
Yeah.
So it gets to be really exciting, even through the failures or the successes, there's a lot to be learned along the way.
So you are talking, we are talking to an audience where design thinking has not necessarily been introduced or embedded into our fabric at Novo Nordisk. So what advice would you give new practitioners?
I would say let go of everything that you believe to be true. Right?
Yep.
So heading in, you've got whatever thing you're trying to resolve or create or whatever. Just let it go, because it'll answer itself through the activities that you're going to go. But I would say make certain you remain flexible and aware when things start to change.
That's really good advice. And just, would you say, just kind of jump in, just dive in?
Yeah, why not?
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you Google it, it's just some blocks. It's not scary. Just, just start using it.
That is true. Although you and I both know pharma can be fairly rigid in our own processes. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, so it's just one more process that you want me to do.
Yeah, anytime you put process in a large corporate environment, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, there's almost an allergic reaction sometimes to it.
But there are brainstorming opportunities even in large pharma, and so maybe take the process out of it and just start to think things through a little more easy.
It's a great segue to, and actually for myself as well, of a leader who will hopefully be introducing this to my teams, is watch out for the traps of process. So what other traps and dangers would you recommend to us to avoid or watch out for?
I guess within the sort of a large corporate experience, I mean, it shouldn't be boring. It shouldn't be process or standard operating procedures or, this is a component you must do, or even thinking about I know there are steps that they have mapped out. Sometimes you don't have time for all the steps. Sometimes you still get a result. Sometimes you have more steps than you probably set out for. Just relax, right?
Yeah.
Think about the name of it. It's design thinking.
Right.
Just relax.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. Because you put a process or framework, and people are like, wait, you can't go to C unless you go to A, B,
and then we got to
C.
talk to compliance and legal and regulatory.
Right.
And then it's all
exactly.
It's a whole other
and
thing.
Then and then it just morphs into something that no one's going to even try, because it seems, again, too big, too much. Okay, awesome. Let's switch gears a little bit. You want to have some fun with me?
Okay.
Okay. So at Glooko, who do you text most often?
Steve.
Okay, and he would be?
My boss.
Oh. And why text versus email?
Well, it's text, Slack, just whatever the most immediate, Yeah.
Like, how many texts a day?
I'm gonna have to see my therapist after this. A lot.
Yeah?
We'll just say a lot. Depends on the day and what's happening.
Okay. Who would you say you call the most?
Guys, Steve.
Steve? There's a lot of communication there between you and Steve.
Yep.
Who would you say emails you the most?
My team.
Who texts you the most?
Steve. And my team.
And your team.
My team, for sure.
All right.
Yeah. This is bad.
I would say my admin probably texts me the most, usually chastising me because I'm monkeying around in my calendar and making her life more difficult. What does end of day mean to you?
It seems to be the end of day happens mostly when I'm able to take my dog out for a walk and just, just relax.
What kind of dog?
A Shih Tzu.
A Shih Tzu?
Yeah.
Nice. I have 2 Frenchies. Those little dogs. Yes, end of day doesn't really have a whole lot of meaning.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's those rituals, walking the dog. For me, it's usually a Tito's and soda that I can really kind of say my day's
I didn't know it was
done.
that kind of show, but yes.
Sure.
Some wine, champagne. Yeah.
So would you rather run a meeting or be in a meeting?
It's weird. I think I like doing both. It depends, but do I have to choose?
Well, you kind of do. You're kind of playing, but you're being political here. You're saying kind of both. You're going to have to choose a position.
I think right now my role probably run a meeting. Yeah.
Do you remember the last song you listened to?
Formation.
Do you remember the first concert you went to?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
this is going to tell my age, but Jackson 5
Oh,
at the Circle Star Theater here in the Bay Area.
Nice.
If anyone knows that, they'll know
They'll know
like
exactly,
the whole,
yeah. It's the whole venue, which
Yeah.
is as great as
Yeah,
Jackson
it's a
5
stage
was.
that turns in a circle. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was
Outdoor or indoor stage?
Indoor.
Wow. Busy women like you and I bet probably sometimes find it difficult to navigate balance at time between work and life. And I won't use work-life balance because I frankly don't believe in work-life balance. I think it's somewhat unattainable. But how do you ensure self-care?
I personally have to listen to my body because I think we had talked about this even before. I'm a big introvert, and I notice I get fatigued if I am not sort of aware of like how much I'm out in the public talking about things or interacting or networking, and then at night I just need to like. So if I feel my body reacting, you know, even if I'm working out or eating right, I just recognize I have to like take a break.
Describe what your favorite afternoon would look like. If you could do anything, what would it look like?
I think one of my favorite things is to sit in Paris in a cafe with my girlfriends.
Okay.
Because we can chat it out with wine like for hours, just watching people walk by.
Nice.
Just for hours.
Nice.
Yeah.
And in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, being that you and I are kindred spirits when it comes to being introverted, I think for me, just having a book and being under a shade tree somewhere for hours, uninterrupted, I can't think of a better way to spend an afternoon sometimes.
It sounds
Although
pleasant.
Yours is pretty good too,
Yeah,
I'd have to say.
It's a good one.
Yeah. What is one thing that you used to believe that you no longer believe?
In life and in my career, I always thought if you do X, you're going to get X result. And now I know that there's always opportunity for something magical to happen that is totally unexpected. And I think that's the delight of life, right? That's what the unexpected.
I think sometimes with maturity and in time, you get there. I agree. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball with this question. So if you could do anything work-wise, you were independently wealthy, you didn't need to worry about paying bills, what would you choose for a profession?
I would probably somehow be working in some way with Paris Fashion Week.
Really?
I go there every year, and having had a sort of creative beginning in my education, it's a creative outlet that I really enjoy.
And that now explains to me why, Robin, you look like a fashion plate. I mean, you are beautifully dressed. So that is outstanding every year.
Yeah, for the last 7 years.
With girlfriends or by yourself?
The boyfriend doesn't really like to go to Fashion Week.
Yeah.
He likes to look at the models, but you know,
But
but
yeah, the rest of
girlfriends,
it-
we just like run crazy.
Wow, what time of year is it?
Well, it's multiple times a year.
Okay.
And Fashion Week is a sort of misnomer, right? So it's ready to wear is in the beginning of March, end of February, and then again at the end of September. So, but they have haute couture, men's ready to wear, women's ready to wear, cruise wear, and then it gets all around the world. So, but Paris Fashion Week is the pinnacle.
Wow. Do you ever come up to New York for Fashion Week?
I thought about it, but I just was like, I'm going to fly right over it.
Yeah, well,
and
yes. if given my druthers, I'd probably choose Paris too.
Yeah.
Yes, outstanding. Wow, that's a pretty cool profession. Why not pursue it full time?
Well, so this right now that I'm doing is my second career. So I figure I have a third act coming.
Sure.
But I'm doing healthcare right now, and I find a lot of value and enjoyment in it, and Paris is still going to be there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for a phenomenal afternoon and
Thank you.
great interview. It's really lovely getting to know more about you. You have